Hello and welcome everyone. We're so glad you're joining us for this virtual presentation. My name is Liana Harden. I work in community engagement with THPRD, and I'm serving as the meeting facilitator for this meeting. I'm supported by a co-facilitator, Peter Swinton, who is a planner with THPRD and is reporting from our office during this meeting and so wearing a mask for public safety during this video. We want to first say thank you to all our community members who are joining us for this presentation and discussion, whether that was live or on YouTube. We're excited to share about this project, and we look forward to continuing to hear your input because your participation over the course of this study is critical to improving our understanding of your needs. We thank you for being here with us and spending your time with us. Before we start the meeting and review the agenda, I'd also like to take a moment to share about our facilitation process. We have recorded this meeting and sharing a recording of this meeting on the project's webpage to provide another avenue for everyone in our community to learn about the project. During this meeting, at any time, community members could use the chat feature to send questions or comments to the facilitator. During the meeting, we have participant cameras and microphones turned off. This helps ensure that everyone can hear and see the presentation. Our intent here is also to ensure that the meeting is a safe place for all attendees, especially families and all ages. But during the question and answer portion of the meeting, we wanted people to feel that they could engage in a dialogue with us. So during that portion of the meeting, we encouraged attendees to ask questions using the chat. We accepted questions from our community members ahead of this meeting, which we made an effort to address as much as possible during the presentation, and also during the question and answer portion of the agenda. If you have any questions that come up for you after this YouTube recording, please feel free to email us at any time. We are happy to help answer questions and take your comments.
For our agenda this evening, we'll start with a presentation including a project overview and timeline. Then we will talk about next steps and move into the question and answer portion of the agenda. All right, so now we're ready to move into the presentation, and I'd like to introduce our presenters. We have Janine Rustads, our THPRD Planning Manager, and we will have Scott Richmond presenting, our Consultant Project Manager with Jacobs. So I'll let them continue to introduce themselves as they take the virtual floor. And I will hand it over to Janine Rustad to start the presentation. Go ahead, Janine.
Thank you, Liana. As Liana mentioned, my name is Janine Rustad. I'm the Planning Manager at Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, or THPRD. I'm also the Project Manager for the Westside Trail Bridge over Highway 26. I also wanted to mention that I am one of your neighbors. I am one of the recipients of that mailing. So this isn't just a project for me. As a runner, a biker, someone who likes to avoid the car as much as possible, this isn't just a project, as I said. This is going to be a trail I use and a trail that hopefully eventually will be near my backyard. I also want, Scott, if you could introduce yourself. You've most of the THPRD team. I should mention that we also are using the assistance of one of our design planners, Tim Bonin, who is not on this meeting tonight, but does round out our team. So Scott, if you want to introduce yourself and let us know who's on the Jacobs team.
Yes, thank you, Liana, and thank you, Janine. Yeah, my name is Scott Richmond. I'm a project manager and transportation planner with Jacobs, and so I'm the consultant team project manager. We have a bridge lead, Robbie Coombs, who's also with Jacobs. He's not on the call. We have a trail design lead, Sharon Dalio, who's with one of our consultant partners with Tool Design Group. We've got some other consultants who have done various services for the project. I'll talk a little bit more about the results of their work. And that includes One Alliance, who has done the survey, Rhino One, who's done geotechnical work, and then we're going to be getting some constructability support from Brett Schneider. So that's the consultant team.
Thank you. So as you can see, we've brought in some crucial experts for a project of this scale. So before I jump into the agenda, I wanted to acknowledge that this is my first virtual community open house. It is not my preferred format. Would much rather be in a room with all of you, being able to mingle and talk, not only for this project, but for so many reasons, as we're 7 months into largely staying at home. But I am grateful that we do have this opportunity to share information with you this evening and throughout the project. That being said, I hope you'll bear with any technical glitches we may have. So jumping in, starting with the trail overview, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Westside Trail, once it's completed, it will be a 25-mile trail that spans from the Tualatin River to the south, up through to Bethany, and then east into Portland and the Willamette River. A good segment of this trail, I think roughly 10 miles, will be within our district. So the bridge is, or Highway 26, I should say, is a large barrier for connectivity. We applied for funding for this project to get a sufficient level of design to allow us to get a cost estimate to pursue funding of the bridge. These cost estimates are very important, especially if we get federal dollars, because we need to have that certainty to know how much we have to come up with for a match. This project isn't intended to get us through engineering and design, but inform us of what will be needed for future permitting. So before I zoom in to the project area of the trail, we have been asked why this location for this bridge. And I wanted to mention, this is a map from the Westside Trail Master Plan that was a Metro project undertaken between 2012 and 2014. During the master planning for the whole 25 miles of the trail, Metro did look into other options. They explored using Murray Boulevard to the east or Cornell Boulevard to the west. These crossings were deemed to be too out of the way for the proposed trail alignment and not active transportation friendly. As you can see here, that the proposed alignment is through the BPA corridor, which makes this the logical location for a crossing. So zooming then into our project area, it includes the approaches to the bridge from the south, so southwest Greenbrier, up to northwest Cornell Road. Excuse me, I do have cheat sheets, which if I use them, they tend to be a crutch. So we're looking at both those approaches. That does leave a segment of trail to the south that we need to complete, and we are coordinating with the county on an alternatives analysis to look at getting the trail from the southwest 158th and southwest Walker Road up to the bridge landing. We are also starting to investigate funding options for this northern segment of trail up to where we just completed what is segment 18 of the Westside Trail at Northwest Kaiser Road. So it begs the question, why are we looking at the bridge? Well, one is to be able to get those cost estimates and pursue funding. But our hope is to get both the bridge and the southern leg of the trail under construction at the same time, hopefully 3 to 5 years from completion of this project. But even without that southern connection and the northern connection, the bridge will provide important connections to transit. We have the bus to the north, the MAX to the south, as well as the homes, jobs, shopping, and of course, recreation with some of our other amenities. So threading the needle, this is something that Jacobs used as we started getting into this project, and it illustrates why this phase of the project is so important. One of the reasons we're doing this is to determine how we can fit the bridge in through the constraints that you'll hear Scott talk about more this evening. We've got the BPA power lines that run north-south. We've got PGE power lines that run east-west. Of course, the highway itself, wetlands, a stream, and changes in grades from north to south. So again, what we're doing right now, the current funding we have is to get a design concept, not the ultimate engineering for the bridge. We're looking at the baseline survey of environmental studies, and you'll hear about those this evening. And of course, what permitting, what's going to be the best pathway, because we have the federal permitting. This bridge and the abutments will be both within the city and the county. So we face a lot of challenges. With this, I think I will hand it over to you, Scott. If you have anything else to add on this slide, let me know. If not, I will advance slides for you.
Sure, yeah, and appreciate that. I'll just make a couple of notes. So the survey, we had a very detailed topographic survey done, and that unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV or drone image that Janine provided earlier was actually taken by our survey consulting firm, One Alliance. So they have a number of aerial views that they took on each side of Highway 26. I'll be talking a little bit about the key findings from the environmental studies. We are, as Janine mentioned, early in a concept development process, with the idea being to develop enough information and gain approval, including approval and incorporate input from you and other stakeholders involved to be able to refine to a preferred concept that we can then develop more confident costs. And part of that is to identify what permitting and approval needs will need to go through going forward. So for those of you who don't know what that NEPA or NEPA acronym is, that's National Environmental Policy Act. So if THPRD needs support from the federal government, including some federal funding, that would be through Oregon Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration as a lead. We also know that we're we're planning and developing design concepts within right-of-way owned by Bonneville Power Administration, which is a federal agency, and so we are coordinating with them in terms of what their approval process would need to be too. So Janine, you can probably go to the next one from there, and the next one. So Janine talked about the context of the project study area. Part of our background work was to really understand who are the users or the potential users of this section of trail, including the bridge. And so part of that was a demographic analysis using data that Metro, the regional government, has and embedded in their travel demand model and travel forecasting model that include such information as population, age, people with ownership of vehicles, and incomes. One of the key pieces of information that we discovered is that people traveling in this general area tend to have lower incomes than those of the Washington County overall. We also used a service that we call Streetlight. I didn't mention them as a subconsultant, but they're a separate company that deals with big data and synthesizes that into information that can give us clarity about the types of modes that people are using and where they're traveling to and from, and it basically uses information from our smartphones, and it is anonymized, so they don't have private information that they share, but we can correlate that to some of the zone information about the general characteristics of the people making trips within this area. So we had information about people traveling in this general area that's outlined, and this area was divided further into 8 different sub areas. So we're able to get information such as the total number of trips by people driving, people riding bicycles, number of people riding bicycles, and people walking. And the streetlight information also allows some disaggregations in addition to the trip origin and destinations, including travel time and distance, and that provides information about how people are traveling, and then the average daily trip volumes by the zone that Streetlight used, and then TAZ, which is a travel analysis zone, which is a geography breakdown that Metro uses for their travel demand model. It also provides disaggregation by time of day and days a week. So you can go to the next slide. So what we found for existing and potential for walking and biking in the area, and that a lot of trips are already made by walking and biking. So people are using active transportation, but Highway 26 is very much a barrier to people feeling comfortable and actually traveling across the highway north to south by walking or bicycling. We do know from our both our Metro and Streetlight data that a lot of the trips are less than 3 miles, and so that provides a lot of opportunity for trips that may be now made by vehicle to be shifted to bicycle or potentially walking. We focused on, for example, the zones that have Sunset High School and then the THPRD main recreation complex, 158th and Walker. And we clearly show that there's high demand between those general zones as well as neighborhoods to the north and south. So we were very confident that a new bridge roughly halfway between the Cornell and Murray interchanges, which are the only options for people to walk or bike north and south across Highway 26 right now, could provide a much more direct route. In particular benefits to people of lower incomes and communities of color. Go to the next one. So that's some context about the opportunity, the characteristics, and the potential for some of the use. This gives a little bit of context about the land use, and then I'll get into the environmental. So this is really showing that there's a mix of land uses. It's predominantly right in the study corridor we're looking at is primarily industrial uses, and it's surrounded by residential areas. And of course, on the north side, we've got Sunset High School and then the THPRD Swim Center. Then to the south, we've got THPRD's facility. We've got a lot more commercial uses closer to Walker Road. And then, as Janine mentioned, we've got major employers on both sides of the highway, and then we've got a MAX line to the south too. So there's potential for trips between major transit stations and where people live and work. This also shows that the project area is primarily within unincorporated Washington County, but it's right on the edge of the city of Beaverton. And so we're looking at what land use approvals will be needed both from the county and Beaverton to advance and implement the project. And as we mentioned, it's primarily BPA right-of-way that we're looking at in terms of the location for the bridge and section of trail. You can go to the next one. One of the major constraints, in addition to major electrical transmission lines, is a little over an acre wetland area on the north side of Highway 26. And part of that wetland is within the study corridor, the BPA right-of-way. And it's there's a tributary, an unnamed tributary, sort of relatively small stream that cuts across the project area. And it flows through a pipe under Highway 26. We learned from Columbia Sportswear representative that they have to go out and clear out this drain area on sort of the left side of this image on the north side of Highway 26 because it backs up and causes some flooding. So there's debris that gets in there frequently. But this large wetland area, part of our challenge is to try to minimize impacts to that area. And in addition to the wetland itself, Clean Water Services has a 50-foot buffer around that wetland that we need to consider for permitting as well. It's a riparian protection area. Go to the next slide. We did a botanical survey, so a plant survey, one of our biologists, and she discovered that thankfully there are no protected plants, so there's no Endangered Species Act protected species, neither for the federal government or the state. It's primarily noxious and invasive weeds, and it's a marginal habitat for special status plants. And it's this map shows that there is actually a couple of different wetland types: emergent wetland and a forested wetland. And then it shows different types of vegetation, some of which is ornamental, landscaping around some of the private lots, and then what she termed as herbaceous vegetation within the corridor. And then there's some parking areas as well. Go to the next one. So I talked a little bit about biological resources. There's no protected species or critical habitat. There's a tributary to Willow Creek, and Highway 26, I should mention, is likely a complete barrier to fish passage in this tributary. So if anyone's seen any fish, let us know. But we don't see that as a candidate for it. And go to the next one. We also did some research and a survey of the site for historic area properties. So those are properties to be historic. They need to be 50 years or older. For planning purposes, we look at properties that are 45 years or older, recognizing that the project could be implemented, as Janine mentioned, within 5 years. So the highway itself is over 50 years old. The BPA transmission line, which is the large north-south lines on the east side of their right-of-way, and then the Oregon City to St. John's transmission line, which PGE owns, and they lease that from BPA in terms of their land for that. That runs north-south on the west side of the right-of-way. The Oaks apartment complex on the northwest side, so just south of Cornell Road, the west side of the BPA right-of-way. And then the LifeWorks Northwest housing between Science Park Drive and the BPA right-of-way just south of Cornell Road. And so part of the approval would be that both the transmission lines, our historian determined that they would require National Historic Preservation Act determinations of eligibility to the National Register of Historic Places. So we're not actually doing that right now, but that would be the next part of the preliminary engineering process through environmental approval. So that might have been the last. Oh, archaeology too. No discoveries of any archaeological resources. So we had our archaeologist do some desktop research, and then went out on site and conducted shovel test pits, and he found nothing, no historic or prehistoric artifacts, and recommended no further study for that. And then I should also mention that we also did a survey. We did a study for any recorded hazardous materials sites, and we didn't find any issues right within or adjacent to the project area either. So you can go to the next one. All right. So we are at the very beginning. We've assessed really the challenges, as Janine mentioned, threading the needle. These are a couple of shots from the drone. So the one on the left is on the south side of Highway 26. It's looking to the north. The one on the right is on the north side that's on the south side looking south. And certainly the transmission towers and the lines themselves are a constraint that we need to try to work around. The utilities have told us that their desired clearance is 25 feet horizontal from any vertical element. So that's not necessarily the path that's at grade, but it's the ramps and as the bridge approaches elevate to get over the highway. That we need to be coordinating in terms of trying to minimize our distance from those towers. And we've been continuing to coordinate with both BPA and PGE throughout our process. We can go to the next slide. We also need to, bring the bridge and trail approaches over Highway 26. ODOT standard for the clearance from the highway grade to the bottom of the structure is 17 feet and 4 inches. That's in their bridge design manual. And we've been also coordinating with ODOT. We also need to make sure that we have the bridge abutments cleared away horizontally sufficiently from the highway shoulders itself. This is showing an aerial view of the north side of the project area, and there's a relatively short distance to try to come down, bring people down via ramp and structure from the bridge to the north down to Columbia Way, and to try to meet grade at Columbia Way, where bicyclists and pedestrians, people walking and riding bikes, can access the trail from Science Park Drive, where there's a protected crossing right at Columbia Way on Science Park Drive. So there's our challenge is to try to bring the trail and the bridge and trail over structure, which would be a combination of some ramp structure and likely boardwalk over this wetlands area with a minimal number of columns or supports needed to impact that, to minimize impacts to that wetland area and come down to grade at Columbia. And then to the right, to the north of Columbia, we would continue the trail up to Cornell. And we've gotten feedback that, if there's a way that we can minimize impacts to Columbia's parking, we'll look at that too, but we want to stay within that BPA right-of-way. You can go to the next slide. This is closer to a ground view of that same area, looking at some of the challenges. There's some topography that we need to get through, and this is roughly where the stream cuts through the wetland area. So it's still relatively dry at this time of year, but we get a month or so down the road after we've gotten some rain, and that's a pretty boggy area. And so we can try to span that with boardwalk and ramp to come down to grade at Columbia Way, and to try to stay sufficient distance from those utility towers. Go to the next one. These concepts, both the plan view on the top and then the profile view on the bottom, are very preliminary. We are working with THPRD and others to optimize this alignment. I should mention that the profile concept on the bottom is exaggerated. So those horizontal lines represent 5 feet of vertical distance, and this represents, so the number 1 is where the basically the center of the bridge structure, and that blue line there just below the 1 on the bottom side, right, is the bridge deck. So this is a conservative, based on a higher profile bridge type. We've had some coordination with THPRD where there's a truss type that I'll talk about in a minute, which allows for the bridge deck to be a little bit lower, so that we don't have as much grade to deal with in terms of ramping down. That number 2 corresponds with the center line of Highway 26. There would need to be a structural support in the median Highway 26. Highway 26 has other bridge structures that include a median, and there's sufficient space to do that, thankfully. It lowers the potential cost of the bridge, not having to span the entirety of Highway 26 without a center support column there. Number 3 on the image is representing Columbia Way, where I mentioned we need to meet grade there. And you can see, even though it's exaggerated, there's some grade challenges that we need to deal with. And we're looking at a combination on the north side of Highway 26 of ramp, which would be, you know, metal and concrete likely, and then boardwalk, which could be concrete, and then a wood composite material that the THPRD has used on a number of other smaller structures crossing through wetland and stream areas. And then to the right of that 3, we would be rising up to meet the to stay at grade and connect with Cornell. So that might be the last. Oh no, bridge types, of course. Go ahead. Just some basic information about the bridges, and we're getting into more detail about that. So as I mentioned, there'd be a support column in the median of Highway 26, roughly 125 feet per span, plus or minus. The bridge width we're looking at is, so the trail width would be 12 feet for a walking and biking surface with 1 foot shoulders, so a total of 14 feet wide. The bridge deck width itself would be 14 feet wide, and then with other structural support, handrails, likely fencing. We'll need to have protective fencing so people can't throw things off the bridge. It would be roughly a 16-foot width wide, and the total bridge area is approximately 4,000 square feet. I mentioned already the 17 feet 4 inches vertical clearance. That's ODOT standard. We will be, as we develop and refine the concepts, coordinating with Oregon Department of Transportation, or ODOT. Those span lengths are fairly typical, and many bridge types could fit the site. Go to the next one. This just shows prefabricated steel truss. So having a prefabricated option versus a customized option could save. And so we're looking at options from potential suppliers for that could be feasible and minimize costs. So I'm not going to go through all the text here, but this will be available. And so these are some of the pros and cons for a steel truss type bridge. And for reference, if it helps, the Sunset Transit Center bridge, just to the east a little bit of where we're talking about for this trail and bridge connection, is a steel truss type, but that was a custom. I'm not sure if it was prefab. So I think I'm going to turn it over to someone else for the next steps.
Liana?
All right.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to check in with everyone about our next steps for this project. And for the next steps, we'll really be focusing on community outreach throughout the duration of the project. So we're inviting community members to view the ongoing virtual meetings so that everyone has an opportunity to learn about the project. So that includes this meeting. As I mentioned, we'll be posting this on the webpage, and it will include a Spanish translation. And we will also be posting the PowerPoint slides on the webpage for you to view, because there's a lot of detail you might want to look at later. We'll also be offering public surveys to collect community input. And there is one open right now until November 22nd, offered both in English and Spanish. So we really encourage you and any others in the community to complete those surveys. That would be wonderful. And as mentioned, everyone is welcome to email us questions anytime. We're happy to respond. You can access all of these engagement opportunities on the project webpage, where you can also sign up for project updates via email. So you'll be able to get notified about any surveys opening or community meetings or more. In addition, I think Janine mentioned that this is our first virtual community meeting of its kind for our planning and design and development departments. So in these strange times, we're all learning the process of how to best hold these community meetings virtually and virtual community input, engagement process. So we welcome any feedback on how we can make these meetings more helpful or accessible. You can do that by email or put it in the chat. We're happy to have it that way. All right, thank you so much, Janine. You can move to the next slide. And now what we're going to do.
Liana, if I can, before we get into questions, I want to acknowledge that we do have a board member with us today. If we were in person, I would be doing this. So Felicita, yes, thank you, Felicita Montblanco. If you want to say anything about the project, please let us, feel free. You want to unmute her? Can you?
I'm just really excited, and thank you for all your hard work. And I really appreciate that so many folks have engaged in this new way of community engagement. And I just really appreciate it because I know we're so all zoomed out, but it matters. And we really appreciate you being here. And the board of directors is super accessible. So always let us know if you have thoughts and feedback. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm really glad you introduced her. Thank you so much, Janine. Now we are moving on to the question and answer portion of the agenda. We'll start with those questions that we received ahead of time from our community. So how that worked is we received questions that were submitted ahead of this meeting via email. We reviewed those and summarized those questions to share with everyone tonight. And Janine and Scott will be happy to help respond to those. We may not be able to get to all the questions that we received in the last 24 hours, or maybe all the questions that we receive in real time during this meeting, but we will do our best. And if we aren't able to get to those tonight, if you've emailed us, either way, we will definitely send you a written response in addition to that answer that we'll provide tonight at this meeting. So you can definitely expect an email response in writing. In the meantime, if you had a question come up during the presentation that you haven't already put in the chat, please go ahead and share your question by entering it into the chat. Again, if you can, try to address it to a facilitator. That's myself, Liana, or Peter. And then what we'll do is our best to bring that forward to Janine and Scott to answer. So what I'll do as we start collecting some of your questions in the chat, I'm going to turn it over to Peter. And Peter, would you please start us off by reading those first questions that were submitted before this meeting? Then when you're finished, you can move right on to those questions that we received in the chat bar.
Thanks, Liana. Good evening, everybody. So some of the questions that we received over the past couple of weeks. The first one is, why this location? Janine.
So yeah, so we hit on that very briefly during the presentation, but this was studied during Metro's Westside Trail Master Planning. It was envisioned that the trail would go through the corridor, and that is our hope, that it'll continue up through the corridor, hopefully from Walker Road, but at some point we will be bringing it up to Greenbrier. So this made the most logical location. Again, Cornell Road or Murray Boulevard would put folks out of direction significantly. And also there are challenges with those areas with going out of direction and it not being friendly to active transportation.
Great, thank you. The second question that we received was, will all the north-south sections of the Westside Trail connect to the bridge by the time the bridge opens?
Hopefully the southern will. We have that one more section to go from Southwest 158th Avenue and Southwest Walker Road up to the southern bridge landing at Southwest Greenbrier. Our goal is to have that under construction at the same time as the bridge. It still remains to be seen. Funding is a question, of course, for the bridge. The trail will be a little easier to get funding for. And then with the north side, because of community input, we are actually looking at funding options to get a design going on that. I don't know that that would be at the same time, but hopefully shortly after the bridge.
Thank you. So third question is, this is a big project and will require adequate funding. Why is this project so important?
This phase of the project, which I should have mentioned, this initial design concept phase will go through September 2021. And I'll start with this phase and then I'll go into the bridge itself. So this phase is important so that we can get a good handle on the costs. When you look at the regional plans that talk about this bridge, I think we might be up to 15 million. When I started with the district a little over 5 years ago, it was 9 million. So we really need to know what those costs are. If we go for federal funding, it's very important to have it as close to the actual cost as possible. But as many of you may know, and if you're not aware, Metro last year, the voters approved another nature and trails bond. And that has significant funding for regional trails. And we think both the southern section of the Westside Trail that is needed and this bridge are very good candidates. This bridge was flagged as I think a medium, if not high priority in the Westside Trail Master Plan. It's the next big barrier to making this 25-mile connection. And I think once we get the trail in place, it'll be very easy if we don't have those final north-south connections to get them. So we're looking at that Metro bond. Metro, of course, has another measure out on this ballot for transportation funding. So those are two alternatives. And as I mentioned during the presentation, in addition to this being a crucial connection for the Westside Trail, even today, there's homes on both sides connecting to the school. Right now, there's a catch basin for Sunset High School that's south of the highway. There's no way to safely walk or bike. Same with, I should know the middle school. I run by it. I believe it's
Meadow Park.
Meadow
Yeah.
Park, thank you. So it helps with safe routes to school. In addition, Nike, Columbia Sportswear are some of the big companies that have businesses, offices in this area. So it's an important connection for many reasons.
So this next question I'm going to direct to Scott. Has THPRD talked to the Portland Parks Foundation on lessons learned from the building of the Barbara Walker Crossing Bridge?
So that's a great question, and I have it on my my short-term bucket list to actually go over that bridge. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't been over that Barbara Walker Bridge yet. We have not talked to Portland Parks about that yet, about lessons learned, but we'll be talking more with THPRD about how best to approach that and incorporate information. I mean, I will add that every context, every circumstance is different, but anything that we could glean from other successful projects and apply going forward, we'll certainly take into consideration.
And I also want to add, Peter, that we participate in Metro has a regional trails quarterly forum where trails and parks provider get together and talk about their experiences. So we regularly are a presenter on either Westside Trail, different segments that we've constructed. I will be doing a presentation on the status of our project on November 4th at that forum. And also through the Washington County Planning Directors meeting, I've been talking to Wilsonville, who is in the process of designing a bridge over, I believe, I-5. So they're right now it's sharing how do you do public engagement in this new world that we live in. So we are trying to incorporate both the expertise that Jacobs brings and talking to our jurisdictional partners around the region.
Excellent. Janine, this next one is for you. Has THPRD asked Columbia, Nike, Pacific Office Automation, and other nearby businesses if they're interested in partnering for win-win solution, using the local business expertise in design and engineering to support the project?
hopefully they're watching. They have been, some of those businesses have been at our property owner and agency stakeholder meeting. We do have a park foundation that does a lot of the engagement and fundraising with private companies. We have a grant specialist who goes after the public funding. I have raised this with upper management to see how we might be able to have those conversations.
Okay, the next question we have is, what other bridge types were considered?
We are actually not at the, we've had a preliminary meeting between staff and Jacobs on potential bridge types. And I think we might have gone through 9 of them with pros and cons. And I remember when we went out with the RFP, prior to going out with the RFP, I met with many consultants and their question was, what's more important? The design, so the aesthetics, what it looks like, or the cost? And my answer was always yes. They're both important, but we are using public dollars, so we do have to be responsible with that. We look forward to hopefully our next public engagement being about some design types after we've studied, because it's not just, as I learned, this is a new type of project for me. So as I learned from that initial meeting, it's not just the cost of the bridge, but what it takes to get up to the bridge. So while one structure might be less expensive, it's going to cost more with what's called the abutments and the ramps to get there. So we're going to take all this into consideration and come up with several options to take to the public, our advisory committees, and of course our board.
Thank you. And then the last question that I have is, whose jurisdiction is it to maintain the bridge?
That ultimately will be ours, and that's something we'll have to talk about because, of course, and Scott, if I miss speaking because it's over the highway, we'll have to look into how we do that because this is a very different bridge from anything else we have in the district.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at our chat. And I have not seen any questions come my way. So if folks have questions, please make sure to put them in the chat. My name is Peter Swinton, so direct them my way, and I'll turn it back over to Liana in the meantime.
Thanks, Peter. I did get actually several questions, so we can jump into those. The first question we have could be for either Janine or Scott. The question is, what is the estimated completion date for the entire project?
As I said, this phase of the project will go through September 2021. And Scott, if you could touch briefly how long permitting may take and then construction, noting that we usually do our construction during the dry period. We don't do wet weather construction.
Yeah, sure. I am not an engineer, much less a bridge engineer or a construction specialist. But in talking to some of our engineers, it's a small enough project that it should be able to be done in one construction season, and that's what we are anticipating too. So it would be typically ODOT or Washington County or THPRD's construction season, and that's a relatively long period of time. We're not having to work within water or anything like that. So in terms of the length of time that for the construction, that could be about a year. For the permitting would be done concurrent with the final design. We need to, one of the wild cards is primarily BPA in terms of their length of time, because since they're the owner of the right-of-way, they also they own permits and approvals, including their own National Environmental Policy Act process. So that could take up to 2 years potentially. We would do everything we could in terms of the design and permitting if we are involved in that stage to try to make sure that we're focusing on critical path items and try to expedite that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. This is just a follow-up question somebody else asked, but I think the timing might be right. Why does it take so long for this project? 5 years is what they quoted here. What do you think, Janine?
Because of the complexities. If it was a trail on land we owned, that still is about a 3-year project for us to get the concept, to get through the engineering and permitting, and then again, we only build during a dry weather season. So that's our typical trail and park. We're adding in the complexities of the highway. So we have to have coordination through ODOT, the BPA, their coordination, the federal environmental. So you just add all these layers. And what we found when we get federal money for projects, that we sometimes have to help facilitate the different departments within, say, ODOT to talk to each other to get projects moving. So it's an unfortunate reality that has been a learning curve again for me in 5 years at the district.
Thank you.
Scott, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I think you're spot on. It's the complexities and working with a project that would go through NEPA under Federal Highway Administration's process due to it being a transportation project, but within another federal agency's right of way. And so in this phase of the study, we're trying to make sure that we are identifying all the hurdles that we'll have to go through to be able to implement it and to account for all of those, both in the cost and schedule.
And I should note that we have Gary Keck, our design and development manager, on the call. So if he has anything that he wants to add, we can allow him to share his video.
Can you hear me, Janine?
Yes, I
I
can.
can hear you.
All right.
Putting you on the spot, sorry.
No, that's all right. No, I didn't have much to add to that. I think you guys did a
Okay.
good job.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks, Janine and Scott. So we have just one quick comment I thought I might mention from a participant says, looks really promising and well thought through, full steam ahead. And then we also have another question. This is a great question. It's in relation to the Spring Water Trail or Corridor Trail. And Janine, you'll find this in your chat as well if you'd like to see it visually. The question is, the Spring Water Trail is a known issue where there is houseless people using the trail year round. The trail is known to have safety issues because of this. What are y'all doing to ensure this trail doesn't have the same issues? Any thoughts you'd like to share about the Westside Trail?
Yeah, and I'm going to share first my lack of technological knowledge that with me sharing my screen, I can't figure out how to see my chat.
Oh, no problem.
Just so you're forewarned. But this is not just an issue with this trail, it's an issue in our parks. We were actually just having an email discussion for those of you who are familiar with North Bethany. We partnered with Clean Water Services and Tualatin Valley Water District on a bridge there. It's a bridge right now to nowhere. Sorry for that unfortunate description, but there will be a future trail there. And it's something we take seriously, both from a safety for our users. Again, I'm one of those, and as a woman who runs alone, I get that, but also for care and concern for those experiencing homelessness. So we try to take a very compassionate approach of bringing resources to folks who we might find camping. It's you, our patrons, who raise these concerns with them. But we try to work with the correct agencies to get them resources, to get them assistance, and not just pack up and move. It's also something, so it's patron safety, it's the care and compassion for those experiencing homelessness. or houselessness, and then also wanting to make sure that if they're camping in natural areas, that we're protecting the natural habitat. So it's something, email me if you want more information on this. I'd say we have a new manager of securities operations, but I think he's been with us for 2 years, and he just brings a very compassionate approach to this.
All right, thank you, Janine. So let's see, next question we have is, could you all talk just a little bit about ADA on the trail? You can remind us maybe of what you've already mentioned on the subject and anything else you think is important to share on the topic.
So Gary, I know you can handle this much better than me, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot again with our requirements.
Yeah, so in our trails functional plan, we talk about ADA requirements that we try to meet on all of our trails, especially the regional trails. And what we allow is, typically ADA on a trail is, something under 5% is our goal, but we know with the bridge or even going up some hillsides and whatnot, we do have to exceed that at times. So we'll follow a different standard, which is it's called the Adag Standard. And it just allows a little more steeper sections for short periods. And for this one, Scott, I think I saw a 7% ramp heading up over the bridge on your profile, which would be allowed within our Adag standards. So what we have found is most of the trails that aren't built yet aren't built because it's super wet or super steep, or there's a ton of utilities, and it looks like this project has a little bit of all that. So we do our best to lay out the trails with not so steep slopes, but we do recognize that it's not always possible to do that everywhere. So we're a little lenient at times with that thought process.
Yeah, thank you. And when we have to go beyond what our standards are, we do talk to management about that. And I've been involved in some of the discussions where we have developer building trails for us, and we do look to make sure there's no other way to not to do it before we allow something in excess of the standards.
All right, thank you so much. Another question that we have that came through, this one looked more specifically for Janine. It says, Janine indicated that alternate paths in consideration from Southwest Beaverton to the proposed 26 West Bridge crossing that better utilizes the THPRD land. When will that determination be done? Would it make sense to make sure it lines up with the bridge?
So we have been in conversations with the county again about how we get from 158th and Walker. And can you see my cursor when I move it?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah,
Yes.
Okay. So from this intersection up to the bridge landing, and we had recently applied for a grant, which we did not get from ODOT, but we are talking also to ODOT about other potential funding sources. So one option is going Walker Road up through our property and then somehow getting up through to the power line. We have Pioneer Park, of course, which we could also cross through there, which gets us up. Another option is that we put in our grant application is Walker Road to the power line. I must say that talking, this is in our conversations with the county a preferred option, because if you're familiar with our campus, this is a wooded area. So it's how do we make people feel safe on a regional trail through a heavily wooded area? And then we'll also look for on-street connections that might get you up to, but everything we are looking at is getting people to the power line corridor to take advantage of that. And if you go to the north of Northwest Kaiser, much of the trail is in the power line corridor, same going south on the Westside Trail that it is through that power line corridor. So stay tuned, look at our website. I hope we will be kicking off that alternative study, and we'll engage the public for that as well.
All right, thank you very much, Janine.
I'm going to hopefully not make everybody dizzy and
Take your time.
thank you.
We also have another question that's come to us. This one is asking if we can provide some data. So can we provide some data to show the traffic across 26? It says, I understand the data indicated that people don't cross 26, but people utilizing the school and THPRD parks travel by foot. What would indicate that people move between the highlighted zones, not just within those zones? Janine or Scott, can you speak to the traffic in that area?
Scott, can.
Yeah, my response would be that we have some information, as I mentioned, as the first part of my presentation, the use of Metro's travel demand information plus streetlight. So we have some information about travel within that area that I showed on the map, and then across Highway 26, and by far most of those trips are by motorized vehicle, but we have some information we can share. And Janine and Liana, I forget if you have that summary report on your website. If not, we can provide that information about the trips across the highway.
I think we will put that on the website in our documents. And also, I think in talking to some of our other team members in the district, that the Westside Trail, I believe the number is currently the usage is 100,000 per year, folks using it. So just based on the use of our trails, and of course, over the last 7 months, our trails have even been more heavily used.
All right, thanks, Janine. And I've made a note to make sure that we're able to add that summary about the trips in that area to our webpage. So I'll hopefully be able to provide that information in more detail for you all. All right, so we do have another question coming through. This one is about the location. Really concerned about whether this particular location is appropriate, and just the thought that it's connecting to industrial areas with homes around it. Would it be better to relocate this particular bridge in a different area like 185th and Bethany Cornell exits, which would connect some different folks to different areas like Tannisbourne and Walmart, etc. So that's the question, is how is this location considered and what was the outcome? And Janine, I understand that there's also something really important that I've learned about this project is the connections with the Metro Regional Trail System and what that means. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit about the location.
Thank you, especially for that lead in, because you're spot on that the Westside Trail, again, is once completed, will be a 25-mile trail spanning from the Tualatin River up through to Bethany and then east into Portland and the Willamette River. So for that trail to be utilized to its full capacity, it needs to get over Highway 26. And if we were to move this crossing for the Westside Trail, again, a regional trail, which is, we have community trails which serve the immediate neighborhoods. Regional trails are really supposed to be just that, serving the entire region, serving as major commute corridors. So with that, if we moved it, as I said, even to Cornell, Bethany, or Murray, that puts people out of way by at least a half mile. And what's shown is that will discourage using this as that major commute route. I do know that the city of Hillsborough and Washington County are looking at a bridge near Cornelius Pass Road, because again, there's a regional trail system that needs to get over the highway. For those community trails, because of the type of investment, so community trail, for example, is our Waterhouse Trail. The type of investment that this bridge is, we're talking from start this phase through development, construction, could be 15 million, give or take a few million on either side. It's not a project to take lightly and not something that can easily be replicated.
Thank you. And Scott, or did anybody have anything to add to that in addition?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. In that case, what I'm going to do is we have several more questions to answer. This is wonderful. Lots of great questions we're getting. This one is actually for Scott. Scott, this question asks about a few years back about an elevated walkway was installed at Pioneer Park just south of the bridge location. And it mentions that they believe over half of the year it is unstable as the north end is underwater. How can we ensure no part of this bridge, particularly to the north near Columbia, will not be underwater?
Yeah, thank you. So as we know, there are a lot of constraints, and we know there's a stream and a wetland on that north side. And we also learned that that pipe under Highway 26 that carries the water frequently or has backed up. And so we know that area gets wet. We, while we're not getting into permitting, we are coordinating with the agencies, entities, including Clean Water Services, who will need to permit that. So we'll need to have enough design information, including the number and placement of piers or footings for the trail. We recognize that through that wetland area, it would need to be up on structure. So I'm not familiar with the Pioneer Park trail that the person questioning is asking about. Now I want to go check that out, or maybe I'll wait a month or two to check that out when it's really wet. But our designers recognize that we need to minimize the amount of fill, and we know permitting wise that we'll need to minimize fill. We also know from one of Oregon Department of Transportation's environmental specialists that this particular site has good potential for some mitigation or restoration for a wetland area. We know from our biologists, our wetland scientists, that it's not a very high quality habitat, so there could be potential to increase the water holding capacity of that area with additional wetland vegetation conditions that could offset some of the impacts of the trail. So while there's no guarantee, the design would be developed to account for potential maximum rise in water elevation there, and to keep people out of keep that trail and structure usable.
Yeah, and this is also something that's very important to us. For those of you who may use where the Fano Creek Trail goes under Shoals Ferry Road, we have a problem with water in that area being unusable 9 months of the year. So we're even there looking at how do we get a at-grade crossing, so crossing at the street level. And throughout the district, we have, as we are able to, been looking at boardwalks. If trails are in floodplains or wetlands, can we get them on boardwalks that are higher and get them out of the water? Again, with this level of investment, we will make sure that the engineering is sound. And while we can't predict every storm that comes, as Scott said, we want to design this so it is usable.
All right, thank you so much. In just a minute, I'm going to move to Peter. I know you've received some questions, but I would just want to check in with Scott. Scott, have you received any additional questions or comments that you'd like to respond to directly?
So there was a comment and question about, and this was a Waterhouse Trail connection with a person suggesting that connection with a bridge between 185th and Bethany Cornell exits would be preferential, including a way to cuddle out a lot of short car trips. So I'm not sure if, and asking about how this location was identified, which Janine addressed early on as part of the Westside Trail Master Plan.
Yeah, I think we did ask that or Janine addressed that question as well. And then I think the only follow-up to that question that we might help address is if this is why this project would be happening versus connecting the north and south end of Waterhouse Trail is the additional follow-up to that question.
And I think we did internally look at that, and Liana, we can provide it in an email or even put it in our frequently asked questions if need be, that the county several years ago did improvements to Bethany Boulevard, that overcrossing, and where there had not been sidewalk and bike lanes, they did add those. Again, with the Westside Trail, this was a master plan trail through a regional effort over 2 years, and this was the decided location, and we're currently focusing on that.
Okay, thank you, Janine.
Welcome.
And then I'm going to move to Peter in just a second, but I just want to mention with a lot of these questions are such good questions, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a lot of answers to our frequently asked questions on our webpage so that you can also see some of these questions addressed there as well. So I'm also, let's see, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Peter. Peter, I know you had some questions that you wanted to bring to Janine and Scott.
Thanks, Liana. So my first question is, one of our attendees asked, our house backs up to the power lines across from Pioneer Park. Will there be a path behind our house, or will it cut through Pioneer Park?
That is part of the alternatives alignment we need, that it may be in the BPA corridor. So if you back to the BPA corridor, it's possible that the trail will be there. It is possible it could go through Pioneer Park. That's something we're looking to study.
Okay, and then a next question is, how about the parking lots and businesses already located on the on the way of future trails under the power lines? How would the trail go through those?
That's part of this design project. We are in communication with all those property owners that have those rights under the BPA. So again, and Scott mentioned with Columbia, that we will try to minimize as much as possible. A lot of these businesses see the trail as an asset and a benefit to their employees. So we will work with them to minimize. Stay tuned.
And then I've got another question here on Pioneer Park, and just asking how the trail would plan to merge into the park's internal trails.
That is still another item to be determined through hopefully an alternatives analysis that we can kick off within the next year. Great.
And then just a statement from one of our attendees in support of the project, saying that this is a landmark. This will be a landmark and will be seen by thousands of people every day. So let's make it beautiful. Thank you for that statement of support.
Thank you.
Another question is, what safety features will be included in the plan? Is there any surveillance of the bridge, lighting, and how will access to the freeway be controlled? And have we consulted with law enforcement?
Right now, we're consulting with ODOT. As Scott mentioned during the presentation, we will likely have to have fencing on the bridge to protect cars below. And I think someone had mentioned in a question, you want to make sure people stay on the bridge is, I guess, the nicest way to put it, for that safety purpose. Scott, I don't know if you have any insight of how, I think we would have fencing not just for the bridge, but also the abutments to make sure people don't enter the highway, walk onto the highway.
Right. So some of those are great questions. And, I think some design details that we're not going to develop in detail at this phase, but we do need to make sure that we don't lose track of them and identify them and apply costs to them. So lighting, for example, and then also we would need to make sure that the people who are using the trail and bridge, that it's not providing them a way to be able to easily get onto the highway. That would be, one could get onto the highway right now with the trail and bridge. That could be more difficult. So ideally, I was just going to say, I also got another question about any consideration of a horizontally curved bridge, and that's also a great question. The answer to that and the concept that I showed earlier is very preliminary. We're already looking to refine that. We may have a couple of different alignment options. The short answer to the curving of the bridge, of course, it can be done. It adds a lot of not only cost, but complexity in terms of the construction method. Not having a pre-built span that could be brought in, but involving a lot more construction and longer term closure of highway lanes and challenges like that. But those are things that we'll consider and present and solicit feedback on during the next round of engagement.
And I wanted to mention too on the lighting that in the past it has been our practice not to light trails, but what we are now looking at is that especially regional trails are commuter routes for folks, and we're starting to get into winter, it gets dark early. So we are looking into those options. Again, we have to coordinate with BPA, with ODOT, where the trail goes either in natural areas or behind homes. We want to be respectful of how we do that. But the bridge, definitely a safety feature, that lighting.
Thanks. And then the last question I'm going to pose to Liana. One of our attendees asked, how am I able to access recording of today's meeting? Will it be just posted on YouTube, or will it also be posted on the project's webpage?
That's a great question. Thank you, Peter. And thanks to the person who asked that question. So you will be able to find a recording of this meeting on the project webpage under the column that says community meetings. And under that column, you'll see this meeting listed, and it'll say YouTube. So you'll be able to find it there on the webpage. If you are also on the THPRD YouTube channel, you'll be able to find it there. So it'll be in both places.
Thank you. And that's all I've got. So I'll turn it back over.
Beautiful. Thanks, Peter. So I have a question here that I think is fairly relevant to the topic we were just covering. Let's see, it says, I understand it's still early in the bridge design or in the design process, but I wonder about lighting and safety. A thought is that European bike trails are paved with a glow in the dark composite. Children will definitely commute to and from the high school and rec services in early dark and dusk. Thank you.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen that. I should also disclose my mother is from the Netherlands, so have that bike culture, and it's something we can look into. I can't guarantee it. I don't know what the costs are, but it's an intriguing concept. So Scott, challenged.
It is an intriguing concept.
Yeah, and we need to look into maintenance. That's also a consideration when we construct, that it's one thing to build it, but we have to make sure we can maintain it. We have those resources. But I like the concept, as I said, and safety will absolutely be a consideration.
Beautiful. Thank you, Janine and Scott. I have another question here. This one asks, are there ways that local property owners can increase the likelihood of approval for a trail from Walker down the BPA corridor as opposed to an alternative trail, the routes that were mentioned? So this asks specifically about a trail down the BPA corridor, and it's whether local property owners can increase the likelihood of such a trail.
Please, when we start the alternatives analysis, which will have an engagement process such as this, become involved, let your voice be heard. We'll make sure that the county is in those meetings. And of course, we'll be engaging with BPA. But I can say preliminarily that seems to be the most logical route. So we will count on you to let us, to voice that as we get into that phase of the project.
And just so, just to let everybody know that anytime we have a new project like that starting, you can always go to our webpage. From our main page, you can find our projects in progress. And we always have a list there of all our projects in progress. So you can find new ones listed there when you come visit our webpage.
And Liana, would there be a way, I'm hoping we get to kick that one off and then, next several months, definitely within the next year, to link the project pages. So if someone's watching this page, that we can have a news that, or something to let people know that we're starting on the alternatives analysis.
Yes, absolutely. So typically we release we do a press release on our webpage. We post on local social media, and then many of you in this meeting may have also received a mailer. So local property owners will receive a postcard in the mail when we have outreach opportunities for that, or any other new projects. Oh, okay, let's see what else we have here. So I do have a comment, just a comment from someone who says, Kevin says, from Westside Trail Master Plan Report, says this section is the highest rated near-term priority and the most crucial section for functional regional trail. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. I couldn't remember if it was high or medium high, so I appreciate that.
And it looks like I do not have any additional questions listed in my chat. So I want to check in. Peter, did you receive any more in your chat?
I did not, although Kevin also paid us the compliment of saying that we did a great job with the public meeting tonight. So thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I figured out how to get my chat up and I didn't get any questions. I think me okay. Saying I couldn't see my chat probably dissuaded folks.
Gotcha. And then, so Janine and Peter haven't received any extra or additional questions. Scott, have you received any additional questions or comments to share?
A suggestion to Google search the rip-sourced footbridge in Oberhausen. So I will check that out.
Oh, and if you can email me that name, I will do that as well.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
All right. Well, in that case, it is 7:26. And as promised, we want to make sure to end on time for everybody. We got such great questions tonight. We really appreciate you attending and being here and asking those. As I mentioned, what I'll do is follow up and adding some new frequently asked questions to our webpage. And then we will also send some direct emails to those of you who emailed us questions. We'll be happy to respond in writing. So again, thank you everybody for being here tonight. If you would like to rewatch the meeting or see any of those PowerPoint slides, please visit the webpage. In the coming days, we'll have those posted. Thanks to our presenters tonight, Janine and Scott. And to close the meeting, what I'd like to do is to hand it off to Janine for a final comment. Janine, would you like to take the virtual floor?
Yes, thank you. And again, as Liana said, thank you all for being here. I really wish for many reasons we could do this in person, But thank you for attending. We appreciate your time, your thoughtful questions and comments. Your input means a lot to this project. We welcome you to contact us at any time. You can do that through the webpage. We're happy to talk with you, answer any questions or concerns that may arise through the project. And we look forward to keeping you updated as we move forward. So thank you and have a lovely evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.